Hey everyone, it's Colleen with Made for Mermaids. Welcome to day 2 of our Hudson Hoodie sew along. Today's steps are going to include constructing and attaching our pocket, attaching our side panels, and then stitching up the shoulder seams. So not too much work today. The pocket does seem a little overwhelming until you actually have the pieces in front of you, and it really isn't too bad once you get started. So first, make sure you have your pieces marked. You may not be able to see it very well. You can see I have the little pink dots there with my fabric marker, and then I've put a clip on the top of both of my pocket pieces. They are marked a little bit differently, so you want to be sure to keep those straight. And then aside from that, I have my center panel piece. I have 2 side panel pieces, mirror images, and then I just have my back piece. So the first step is going to be to take your center panel piece, push this out of the way a little bit, and you're going to take one of your pocket pieces, and with right sides together, you need to place your pocket piece on top of your center panel. The fabric I use for my pocket is actually thin enough that I can just see it from the wrong side. If you can't, you need to make sure that instead of clipping at the pocket marks, that you put a pin there, because we're only stitching, right now we're only stitching in between those 2 marked points. And I can take that one off the middle now. So here's what it looks like. You can see we just have it clipped with wrong sides together. So now we're going to stitch just between those marked points with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to first use a basting stitch. So you can see I've basted it on there. Now we'll switch to the other side. And then after basting, of course, I will switch to a stretch stitch. And I know it's so tempting to do all the construction on the serger because it feels like it will be just much quicker and it'll be done faster, but I'll show you real quick. So you can see I've basted it just down to the point there. So this edge here is loose. And I know it's so tempting to use your serger, but for this, you really need the precision and the control of your actual sewing machine. So for the entire pocket construction, I highly, highly, highly recommend using your sewing machine. This part, there is no choice. You can't really, you need that seam allowance, so. All right, now we need to go back over those stitches with a stretch stitch, keeping the same 1/2 inch seam allowance. And once again, just remember that you're not sewing through those points. So you can see my stitches. I'll do the other side quickly. I'm going to pull out my basting stitches really quick. I just like to baste it first to make sure that my pocket piece doesn't move around while I'm doing a stretch stitch. Okay, so you can see I've attached my pocket with my stretch stitch. I've taken out the basting stitches. So now you need to take a minute and clip. We're going to clip through the layers to the seam allowance, but not through the seam allowance. So you can see I haven't clipped through any of my stitches. And do that for all 4 ends. So at all 4 places where you have the pocket and center piece marked. So once you have all 4 clipped, we're going to take the pocket piece and turn them both right side out. So now you can see wrong sides together. This is a great time to give your pocket piece a press. I'm just going to finger press it for the time being. Once you've got your pocket piece turned right side out with the wrong sides of the fabric together, you need to take your other pocket piece and place it on top. We'll match up the top and the markings here. You can see the top of my pocket I have clipped. We're going to stitch that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, I'm going to do a basting stitch first. Just helps make sure the pieces don't slip on me. Again, I'm going to do a basting stitch first. And then we'll go over that with a stretch stitch. I'll remove my basting stitches. Once you've taken out the basting stitches, we're going to baste all 3 bottom layers together. These raw edges will get finished up when we do the waistband, so we don't need to do a stretch stitch here. I'm just going to place my clips and then run a basting stitch. Do make sure you catch all 3 layers. It'll just make it easier in the following steps. When we go to attach the waistband and things, it just makes it easier to have 1 layer instead of 3. Okay, so I have my pieces at the bottom all clipped together. Just going to baste them quickly. So you can see this part of the second pocket piece that we placed, that's going to get sewn up in the seam allowance. And then you can see here, that's the inside of the pocket. So you have to be very careful when attaching the side panels not to catch any of this center panel. So this is another step where I like to baste. I know it seems so tedious to do all this extra basting, but for me it really helps save time in the long run because I'm not seam ripping anything. So we'll take one of our side panels first, and we're just going to clip it here along the side seam. So after I baste, I'll do a stretch stitch to actually attach it, and then I will finish the edges on my serger. So I won't do the actual construction part on my serger because it's just too hard to get super close to the pocket. But if you baste first, that gives you a great guideline, and then you can make sure you haven't chopped off any of your center panel, because there's not much you can do at that point. You're just kind of out of luck. So you can see this is what it looks like from the back. Got my side panel clipped on. Here's what it looks like from the front. You can see I don't have any of the panel clipped in. It's all free there. We'll take a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and it's really, really important for this that you get it precise, because otherwise you'll have a gap right here. So if you don't get it close enough, you'll have a gap there. So make sure it's exactly 1/2 inch, and you can baste it and then go back and check and make sure that you got it exactly where you need it. So then you can see here's what it looks like from the back. And then you can check the front. So you can see I don't have that gap. I got it right up against this seam allowance here. So I took exactly 1/2 inch. You'll also know because you really shouldn't see much of the pocket when it's flat down. You may see some of the lining depending on how the person is standing or holding their hands, but looking at it straight on, you shouldn't see any of the pocket lining. So once you're happy with it, if it looks good, you can go ahead and use your stretch stitch to attach. Going to check it again, make sure everything still looks good, and then I didn't get my center panel caught. Looks good. So I will take my basting. Okay, I've taken all of my basting stitches out, so now I'm going to attach my other side panel. So same steps this time. We're going to pin or clip it with right sides together. Make sure you get all 3 layers there at the bottom. Be careful not to clip any of your center panel. Or your front pocket. And again, I'll show you from the front. So you can see I have it clipped, making sure that the pocket and the front panel are not clipped, or the middle panel, excuse me. And then the back, I have all 3 layers clipped here at the top and then at the bottom, and then through the middle here should only be 2 layers in between those marked points. Going to baste first. I've done my basting stitch and I'm happy with how the pocket looks from the front. So I will go ahead and use my stretch stitch to finish that seam. Open that seam back out and double check the pocket, make sure it still looks good. If your pocket looks secure, you can go ahead and remove those basting stitches. This step is why I really recommend basting first before you do the stretch stitch, especially if you're using something like the triple stitch, because those are just a pain to remove. So it's much easier to catch the problem and just have to take out those basting stitches. They're much looser, they come out much quicker. The only kind of stitches I don't mind seam ripping. Before we do the last small step for the pocket construction, you're welcome to finish the edges of your seams with a serger. You can see I just went over and did it quickly. I didn't cut any off, and I just did the very edges, and that way I didn't have to worry about accidentally getting too close to my pocket. After you've done that, going to finger press the seam allowance toward the side, toward the outside. And then I'm just going to put a couple stitches at the top and bottom of the pocket opening on each side. And that just kind of helps secure your pocket and give it a little bit of strength here. Do on the opposite side along the bottom. You can see I just did a very, maybe you can't see, very small row of stitches. The length you do is really up to your personal preference. There's a recommendation in the tutorial, but if you want it to go a little bit longer, it's totally up to you. And we'll do our last one here at the top. There we go, my pocket is all attached. You can see here's the front. The back is a little bit easier to see because you can see all my seams and everything. And you can see this is only open at the top. The bottom part of the pocket is still basted. And then here's the pocket. The hazards of sewing up my daughters is I can't even put my hand in the pocket. Now our last step for today is to match up our shoulder seams with right sides together. So again, finger press that seam allowance toward the outside. We'll clip it in place. Then do the same for the other side. And we'll stitch these together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And since I'm already sitting at my sewing machine, I'm going to do it on my sewing machine, and then I'll just finish the edges on the serger. You can see one shoulder seam attached. Here's what it looks like from the right side. And then we'll do the other one. There's the second one. Both shoulder seams are attached. You can see I just ran them through the serger really quick again. Now that my shoulder seams are attached, my pocket is constructed and attached, we are ready to set this aside until tomorrow, day 3, and we will attach our sleeves. We'll see you then.